Leaving Japan, let's move over to the mainland of Asia and talk about Chinese theater. Now, Chinese theater is big. That's the first thing to know about China in general. China is big. We tend to think of China as one culture. They're not. They are dozens and dozens of different cultures, and that included many different kinds of drama. A lot of them, though, have some things in common, and many of them have kind of all coalesced together, especially in modern China, into a couple of different kinds that we should know about. There's way too much history in Chinese theater for me to go through all of it. I'm going to give you a lot of just some important points that you should know about. So mostly, like with a lot of other places, it seems to have evolved from religious ritual. And so they would have religious ritual that would have masks and costumes and stuff. And then eventually it would evolve and create music and dance, a lot of costumes, music, dance, and then also other entertainments would show up: juggling, fire eating, sword swallowing, tightrope walking, a lot of things like this. And it was all kind of pushed together into this kind of entertainment bazaar. And bit by bit, this all kind of evolved into a theatrical form. Now, the 13th century is when a lot of this kind of started coalescing together into several different kinds of theater. What happened in the 13th century that made that happen? Well, the Mongols conquered China. Now, usually when somebody comes in and conquers your country, that's kind of the end of a literature boom. But for this case, the Mongols are the exception in a lot of ways, by the way. And there is suddenly a huge boom in literature. Some people speculate that that might have been because the Mongols kind of like to run everything themselves. So suddenly you had a lot of Chinese bureaucrats and stuff that were out of a job, and so they started writing. I don't know if there's any truth to that at all, but in any case, in the 13th century, there's a huge boom in literature, both writing, poetry, and also in the theater. The first play that we're going to talk about is from this period. Lots of plays now from this period. We have a lot of them that we still have from the 13th century. All of them have powerful moral messages and happy endings. So you get the sense that that's kind of what the purpose of theater was for them, was the idea of creating a powerful moral message, but also a happy ending. So it's kind of a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of education all together. Now, one example I want to give you is from a writer named Li Quan Fu. So make sure you write down that name, Li Quan Fu. And the play that he wrote is called The Chalk Circle. Now, if you're familiar with some 20th century type stuff, you might be familiar with a very famous writer named Bertolt Brecht, and a very famous play that he made called The Caucasian Chalk Circle, which, yes, is basically this story, only altered a bit for his culture. And that, I'll be honest, that's the one I'm more familiar with. So I'm going to talk to you about The Chalk Circle and talk about how that is different from play.
So here is the story of The Chalk Circle. The main character is a woman named Hai Tang. And Hai Tang has been sold into prostitution by her family just because of their poverty. And along comes this man named Ma Chun-Shing. Ma Chun-Shing falls in love with her and decides to take her away from that house of poverty, house of prostitution rather, and make her his wife. He already has a wife, but in this culture he's allowed to have a second wife. So he makes her his second wife, and one reason he wants to do this is because he falls in love with her. Another reason is because he has no children. His first wife, Ah Siu, apparently has not been able to give him any children. So they're together, and Ah Siu is very jealous of this whole situation. They have a child, a little baby together. I'll have that be the baby. And Ah Siu is very upset about this and very jealous. And what she basically does is she poisons Ma Chun, and he dies. And then she blames it on Hai Tang. Says that Hai Tang committed adultery and then poisoned her husband. She also claims, this is my child. And one reason she wants to claim this child is because all of Ma's wealth is going to go to his heir. And so Ah Siu tries to claim, this is my child. And Hai Tang, of course, is very upset about this because she loved her husband and because she loves her baby, and she doesn't have any power over this woman who is a lot more rich and important than she is. So along comes a judge, and the judge is basically going to try to judge which of these women really did this horrible act of killing their husband, and also along the way, which of them is the real mother of this child. And so what this judge does is he decides, I'm going to prove which of you love this child the most. And he draws a circle of chalk on the floor. He puts the baby in the middle of it and says, each of you will grab one arm of this baby, and whoever loves the baby more will pull the baby out of the circle of chalk. So you're going to prove that you love them by pulling them harder. And so they both take hold of the baby, and Hai Tang is very nervous about this because she doesn't want to hurt her child. But she knows this is the only way she can get what she wants, and they both start to pull. The baby starts to cry, and Hai Tang lets go of him. And Siu then says, aha, see, I told you I am the proper mother because I loved him more and pulled him. And the judge says, yes, this does prove things because obviously the real mother would never want her child to be hurt. And so he gives the child back to Hai Tang and declares that since she was lying about being the mother of the child, she was probably lying about everything else, and so she gets arrested and condemned for having killed their husband, and Hai Tang and their baby live happily ever after, and that's the end of the play.
Now, when you talk about modern theater in China, you're usually talking about Beijing Opera. Beijing Opera is the dominant form of theater in China. I mean, other than Western theater that has come and visited there, which is still very big all over the world at this point. But Beijing Opera, when you talk about Chinese drama that comes from China in the modern world, that's usually what you're talking about. So what happened is that there was an emperor, and he was having his 80th birthday. And as part of the celebration of this, they brought together a lot of entertainers from all over the empire of China. And along the way, all of these people from different theatrical traditions, they all came to Beijing, which is the capital of China then, it still is today. And as they all came together, they created kind of a new style. They basically decided they liked each other, liked what they were doing together, and put together a new style. And that's how we came up with what's called Beijing Opera. So Beijing Opera, there is a focus on acting and on singing and on dancing. And please notice, not scripts. Scripts are secondary to Beijing Opera. Don't get me wrong, they exist. They exist. There are scripts in Beijing Opera, but a lot of times they're just bullet points saying, make sure you do this, and this, and this, and this. And the actors or the directors or whatever would decide how they're going to put on those shows. A lot of times the actors were expected to just improvise and just decide what their play was about as they were going, as long as they were hitting the bullet points. So another thing to remember about Beijing Opera, and you can tell this from some of these pictures and stuff like that, is that there was very extravagant makeup and costuming. That was a big important part of Beijing Opera, was the makeup and the costumes. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So the actors in China, similar to Japan in a lot of ways, where it's a traditional thing. But as far as I can see, it perhaps used to be all guys, but if it was, that ended pretty quickly because as far as I can see back, it is mostly men and women in Beijing Opera. So the kind of strict separation of guys and girls like we've had in Greece and in Rome and in Japan and a lot of other places didn't seem to have happened in China for whatever reason. But you did have with the actors, you have four distinctive kinds of characters. And generally, an actor was known to play one of those kinds of characters. Each of them had their own distinctive kinds of makeup so that the audience would be able to look and see, and it's almost like a code. You would see that makeup and know, okay, this is that kind of character. Now, there were lots of them, but you can divide them into four big categories. The first is the Sheng. The Sheng characters were the male characters. Now, don't get me confused, though. I mean, there was like 9 different kinds of Sheng characters, but all of them had in common that they were males, ordinary human males. The second kind were the Dan. The Dan were the female characters. Today, they're performed by women. Originally, like I said, they were probably performed by men. But that's changed until now. You can hardly tell that it was there anymore. So the female characters today are played by women, even though they were originally were played by men, probably similar to the Japanese art. Third type is the one that's really sticks out a lot, is the Jing. The Jing are the painted face roles, where they have very intricate faces painted. Um, Gods, demons, courtiers, and thieves for some reason. I'm not sure why. I mean, gods are big and demons are big. Courtiers, that's like big noblemen and stuff like that. And thieves. I don't know why thieves get in there, but they do. So the Jing painted face rolls are big and cool. And the last kind are the Shao. And the Shao are basically clowns. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like they have big red hair and big red noses. They had different kinds of things, but people recognize these are the clowns, these are the silly guys, these are the ones that make jokes. And frequently they were expected to improvise jokes for the crowd. So to keep the crowd laughing while they were watching the rest of the play. Now, there's only one play that I want you to know by this one. It's a really beautiful play, though. It's a simple idea. But the way it's done is really, really good. I'm going to link to a video that doesn't show the entire show, but it shows actors talking about it, and it does show some pieces of it because I really want you to see what this looks like. And it's called Farewell, My Concubine. The basic idea is this. You have this character here, Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu is a king, and he is about to be defeated by another king. And this was a historical piece. I can't remember the name of the other king. It skips me now, but he was a guy that united the Han Empire, and so he was going to conquer Zhang Yu. Zhang Yu is about to be conquered, and he begs his wife, whose name in the play is Consort Yu, which basically means the wife of Yu. So we don't really know her name, but she's the wife of Yu. He begs her to flee for her safety. Get away, my concubine. I don't want you to get hurt. Concubine, by the way, it just occurred to me, some of you might not know what that is. A concubine basically was like a wife that had lesser status. Like frequently kings like this would have several different wives, and they had their big important wives that had big status, and then their lesser wives that were still important and loved, but they had lesser status. So Consort Yu is his concubine, and he loves her very much, and he's asking her to flee away for her safety before they are conquered by this king. Consort Yu begs to stay because she wants to stay with him till the very end and die alongside him. She doesn't want to be separated from her husband because she loves him. But Zhang Yu refuses this and insists you have to run away for your own safety. He wants her to live and survive. And basically what happens is that when Zhang Yu is distracted with things, Consort Yu takes his sword away from him and commits suicide with it, kills herself with Zhang Yu's sword, and then dies in his arms because she doesn't want to be separated from him. If he's going to die, then she wants to be beside him and be there when he does. So, I mean, again, you guys have probably heard me go off about the idea of killing yourself for love, which is a Romeo and Juliet thing, and I've gone off on that, and I don't like that. But this is beautiful. This is a beautiful story, and how it's done is really, really gorgeous. It's a terrific love story. Sad, very, very sad. And go ahead and take a look at that now.